Hey guys, my name is Driven Mad, and today we're going to be going through a comprehensive full guide on Shadow Priest and PvE. Now, without further ado, let's quickly jump into it. The first thing that you need to have correct as your Shadow Priest is obviously your stats. That's with any class in general. You always want to make sure you have your stats correct. You could be doing your rotation 100% correct, but if you don't have the correct stats, then you're not going to be dealing any damage at all. So that's the most important thing that you need to get sorted out first. Now, what are these stats, right? It's an ugly feral. What are these stats? The stats are crit haste, basically. Just crit haste. The more haste you get, the more crit becomes viable. The more crit you get, the more haste becomes viable. Is there a soft cap? No, not really. Just get as much crit and haste as possible. Do not forsake mastery, because mastery does increase the damage of every single ability that you have. So having like 200 or 400 mastery is pretty good in general. But generically, crit haste. Don't equip the piece of gear if it doesn't have crit haste on it. Now, the next thing I want to quickly talk about is traits. Azerite traits are important-ish to a lot of classes, but for Shadow Priest it's extremely crucial to make sure you have the correct Azerite traits, or you're not going to be dealing any damage. Especially in AoE. You're not going to be dealing any damage in AoE if your Azerite traits are wrong. So let's quickly jump into them. The first trait that you must have for AoE and single target in general, and at least on 3 pieces of gear, is Spiteful Aberrations. What this does is that it increases the damage of your aberrations by XXX per item level of the piece of gear that you have equipped if the target has Vampiric Touch on them. So that means if the target has Vampiric Touch on them, your aberrations that fly towards the target is going to deal XXX increased damage. When comboed with the Spirit Talent, you'll see it's extremely overpowered. I'm not gonna say overpowered before it gets nerfed, but it's extremely good. I mean, it's bad, guys. It's bad. Okay. Anyway, the next trait that you must have is going to be Crosis of Insanity. What this does is that it gives you XXX crit for every stack of ward form that you have, depending on what piece of your gear. In this case, with a 405 piece of Azerite gear, it will give me 32 critical strike for each stack of ward form that I have. And this stack decays every second. So it's basically like a lingering insanity. You at least need to have 2 of these on your gear. At least 2 of them. You can play with 1, as I play with 1, because I've rolled 6 billion times on the Grom Shoulders in Mythic and Heroic, and I still didn't get it, but let's not talk about that. But, generically, get 2. The reason I said 2 instead of 3 is because you at least need to have 1 Whispers of the Damned trait. Now, I know if you have high critical strike, high haste, that you can play without this trait. But it's still so much better to have it, because what Whispers of the Damned trait does is that it increases the damage of your Mind Blast by XXX, depending on the item of your gear, but when Mind Blast critical strikes, it generates 20 extra insanity. So all of a sudden you have a 15 insanity generating Mind Blast. Boom, it generates 35 insanity all of a sudden. It makes your rotation extremely smoother. Now let's quickly jump into talents. I'm going to be frank. The level 15 tier, you're only using one talent, Shadow Red Void. I know Fortress of the Mind can have some uses, but and Shadow Insight's good for PvP, I guess. But you're not going to be using either of them for PvE, because having an extra Mind Blast charge is that much of an upgrade, that much of a DPS increase. For level 30 talent, you're gonna you choose whatever you want. For 45, pretty much all of these talents are viable in their own way. The most viable of them being Twist of Fate. Now, what Twist of Fate does is that when the target reaches 35% health, or lower than 35% health, you deal 10% increased damage. This is a passive. It's something you don't have to track, something you don't have to micromanage. It's just simple. It's a passive buff that you get when a target that has your dots on it, or a target that you're hitting, reaches 35 or less. Meaning, if I'm attacking this target here, and all of a sudden this target in China all of a sudden reaches 35% HP, I'm going to get the 25% buff because my dots are on it and my dots are still attacking that target. So it can be pretty ridiculous at times. The next talent that we're going to talk about quick is we're going to talk about Misery. Now, Misery has its niche uses, right? Misery isn't exactly the best talent to play with. I'd advise playing with this talent for like AoE situations if you're new to Shadow Priest, but the actual use for this talent is pretty simple. You're only using Misery if the mobs are spread extremely far out. Not even extremely far out, just far out in general. And all of a sudden, you need to apply both of your dots to them quick before Resident Shadow Priest, Warlock, or Destruction Warlock, or Affliction Warlock steals them for you. So let's say we have this mob right here, which is Skull, this mob right here, which is Square, and we have this mob right here, which is Circle. All of a sudden, these mobs, and I'm standing right here, right? All of a sudden, these mobs are spread extremely far out. I need to dot all of them at once before my Shadow Priest in my group kills it for me. And that's what Misery is for. It's pretty simple. You can use it on stacked fights, like you have all these 4 mobs stacked. You can use it, but it's a DPS loss. So Misery, only really use it if you're new to Shadow Priest and you can't handle the AoE rotation, or if the targets are spread out. Because Misery, what it generically does is that it saves you globals, basically. Because you apply with one global, you can apply both dots instantly. So it saves your globals. And it's extremely useful for fights like Conclave of the Winds. In fact, it's the talent you should run on Conclave of the Winds, specifically for the Raptors. Not so you can cleave the other boss that doesn't count towards your logs for other Raptors, because you can pretty much own. Now, the 60, choose whatever you want. Situational, it's just CC. For the 75, the only talent you're going to be using is the Spirit talent. What this does is that the spirits, these beautiful ghostly things that fly towards the mobs, give them hugs of shadow. That sounds weird. But all of those things are useless if you don't have this talent. Because what this talent does is that all of a sudden they generate 2 insanity. And they deal 100% increased damage. So without this talent, they're going to be dealing like 2k damage, which is pretty much useless. All of Shadow Priest damage in AoE, 2 target cleave, 3 target cleave, XXXXXX comes from that talent, combined with this trait. So all of a sudden you have your spirits dealing 100% extra damage. You have the trait that makes them deal 2k extra damage to the target has Vampiric Touch on it, 2k, 2.2k, 2.2k as well. All of a sudden that's like a what? That's like almost a 7k damage increase to them. You're just going to be owning an AoE. If you look at the logs, look at the charts, all your damage in AoE and a high percent of your damage in a single target comes from your aberrations. So you're pretty much locked into this. Touch of Death, I guess it can give you a bit more execute damage, but let's be realistic. You can still fill out that niche even with aberrations. Shadow Crash, I guess you can use if your haste is low. Like if your haste is stupidly low, you're running something like 500 haste, or you're like leveling your Shadow Priest. That's as much usage you're going to get out of it. If you have like 500 haste, you probably just dinged, right? So I guess you could run Shadow Crash for that, or while leveling. For the level 90 tier, it's pretty simple. Lingering Insanity. Lingering Insanity is pretty much Curses of Insanity, but for haste. So when Void Form ends, its haste buff fades by 1% every 3 seconds instead of ending immediately. So it's pretty straightforward. Legacy of the Void is on the level 100 tier. Surrender to Madness has been fucked, and it's pretty much useless now, so you're not going to use it. Dark Ascension, you're not going to be using Dark Ascension either. So you're going to be using Legacy of the Void. What Legacy of the Void does is that upon reaching 60 Insanity, you're now able to enter Void Form, rather than having to reach 90 to 95 Insanity to enter Void Form. And when you're in Void Form, you deal 5% more damage. So it's a basic 5% damage buff, and you can enter Void Form more frequently. So that's going to be a talent that you're locked into. So let's get Twisted Fate here again. Now, let's quickly jump into the rotation. Pretty much, if you're watching this guide, you've at least read what your abilities do, but I'm going to give you a quick rundown of what they exactly do. Mind Flay generates, it's a channeling ability, deals damage, and generates 12 insanity upon a full channel of it. So don't think as soon as you click Mind Flay, you're getting 12 insanity. You get it when you fully channel Mind Flay. Shadow Vampiric Touch, classic dot, generates 15 insanity. Not generates 15 insanity, I'm looking at the wrong thing, sorry. It generates 6 insanity upon application, and it lasts for, 21 seconds. Shadow Word Pain generates 4 insanity upon application and lasts 16 seconds. Now, one thing I want to talk about for dots is that all dots in WoW have pandemics. Pretty much all dots that you can apply, like Moonfire, all that stuff that you can apply, Feral Druid Bleeds, basically any dot, even Assassination Rogue stuff. All of them have pandemics. What a pandemic generically is that if you refresh the dot at a specific time, the next dot that's applied to it is going to be longer. Without getting into the technical stuff, that's pretty much what it does. AKA, let's say if I refresh Shadow Word Pain before 4 seconds. The 4 seconds that's left on Shadow Word Pain is going to be added to the timer of the new dot that I have. So if Shadow Word Pain lasts 16 seconds, and I refresh it at 4 seconds, that 4 seconds is going to be added to the next dot. So that means my Shadow Word Pain is going to last for 20 seconds. Let's give it an example right here. As long as I refresh it at 4 seconds or before 4 seconds. So if I refresh it now, boom, 20 second Shadow Word Pain. Now I don't think this stacks indefinitely. Meaning that 20 seconds is the highest it can go. It's not going to go. You're not going to do some cheeky strat where you refresh it instantly. For some reason I can't speak today. Where you refresh it instantly and all of a sudden you're going to get like a 1 million second Shadow Word Pain. It's not going to work like that. 20 seconds is the highest. So make sure you refresh Shadow Word Pain at 4 seconds or a bit higher than 4 seconds, 4 to 5 seconds, to get good uptime on your dots. Makes it easier to maintain dots when you know the pandemic time. For Vampiric Touch, the pandemic time is basically 7 seconds, I believe. 6 to 7 seconds. If you refresh it around 6 to 7 seconds, the next dot is going to have that time that you had left added to it, right? So instead of lasting for 21 seconds, the new timer for it is going to be 27 seconds. So we refresh it right now. Damn, I forgot it's a cast. Yeah, I let it time out too far. I was treating it like it was an instant dot. But the next timer is going to be 27 seconds. I'll give you guys an example right now. When it reaches 7 seconds again. Voila! Yep, you see 27 seconds. So keep that in mind when you're applying dots to targets. Make sure you quickly trigger their pandemics so you can have long ass lasting dots, especially when you're multi-dotting. Now, let's get into the actual Shadow Priest rotation quick. Oh, but before that, I quickly want to talk about Shadow Fiend. Shadow Fiend is your go-to CD. Summons a demon to attack the boss. Not a demon, but a fiendy thing to attack the boss, and it generates 3 insanity per hit. We have Mind Seer. Mind Seer is your AoE Mind Flay that generates 5 insanity per target that it hits. So every target that it hits is 5 insanity that it's going to generate. And we have Power Word Shield. Shields people, generates 6 insanity. Those are all your insanity generating abilities other than Shadow Word Void and Void Bolt, but we'll talk about them later. So let's jump into Shadow Priest rotation in general. It's pretty simple. For a single target, it's pretty simple. You have 2 phases. When you're playing Shadow Priest, you have 2 phases that you must keep in mind. You have the build phase, and you have the sustain phase. The build phase is where you're out of Void form, and you build insanity till you reach Void form. The sustain phase is when you enter Void form, and you try to stay in Void form for as long as possible till you drop out of Void form again, or right back to the build phase. So, what is your priority in the build phase? It's pretty simple. The first thing you want to make sure you have up is your dots. That's the first thing you want to make sure you have up is your dots. The next thing you're going to do is you're just going to cast Shadow Word Void until you enter Void form. If you run out of Shadow Word Void charges, you're just going to channel Mind Flay. So, pretty simple. Build phase is get your dots up, cast Shadow Word Void, channel Mind Flay as a filler. Let's do that real quick. Get my dots up, cast your Shadow Word Void, and channel Mind Flay as a filler. As you saw when I cast the Shadow Word Void, I got an insane insanity spike. That is because of Whispers of the Damned, my Shadow Word Void crit, which is another reason Critical Strike is extremely important when playing Shadow Priest. So that's just the basic build phase. It's pretty simple. Dots, Shadow Word Void, filler. The filler is Mind Flay, obviously. Now, for the sustain phase, this is when it gets a bit more technical, if you want to say it. I'm just going to tell you how Void Form works real quick. The way Void Form works is that after you cast Void Eruption, you enter Void Form, and your Void Eruption button becomes a new ability called Void Bolt. Now what Void Bolt does is that it fires a projectile towards the boss, or ad, or whatever, dealing single target damage, and refreshing the duration of all your, adding 2 to 3 seconds to the duration of all the dots around the target that it hits and the target itself. So let's say if I have Shattered Panes on all of these targets right here. Enter Void Form. Kaboom. I cast Void Bolt, extends the duration by 2 seconds. Cast Void Form again, Void Bolt again, extends the duration again. Cast it again, keeps extending their duration by 3 seconds. So keep that in mind when you're playing Shadow Priest. That if the ads are stacked and they all have your dots on it, and you're casting Void Bolt on them, then it's going to extend their duration by 3 seconds. Now, the way Void Form itself works is that it increases your damage by your spell damage, by the way, by 20%, I believe. Yeah, it's 20%. Increases your spell damage by 20%, and it reduces the cast time of your Mind Blast by 1.5 seconds. And every second that you spend in Void Form, you're going to get 0.5% haste. So it does basically 3 things. It increases the spell damage by 25%, 20%, 25% with Legacy of the Void, and it reduces the reduces the cast time of Shadow Word Void by 1.5 seconds, and you get a 0.5% haste buff every single second that you're in Void Form. Spend 30 seconds inside it, you're going to get 15% increased haste. And Void Form ticks up. So every second you're in Void Form is going to be represented by the Void Form icon. So if you're getting Void Form quick, you see it appears right here on my weak aura. Every second that you're Void Form, 5 seconds, I just got, 2.5% increased haste. As my haste will continue to go up, the longer I am in Void Form. Now, the longer you are in Void Form, the faster your insanity depletes. Because as soon as you activate Void Form, all of a sudden you're now using that insanity that you've built up, and it's going to be slowly depleting. The longer you're in Void Form, the faster it's going to deplete. Eventually, it'll deplete so fast, the amount of insanity you'll lose will be way faster than the amount of insanity you can generate. You fall out of Void Form, going back to the build phase. So it's pretty much a cycle. Build phase, enter Void Form, try and last it in Void Form for as long as possible. Fall out of Void Form, go right back to build phase. Now let's talk about the rotation inside the sustain phase. Now, as you know, the sustain phase is activated once you instantly go in Void Form. There's a 3 target rotation when you enter the sustain phase. There's a 3 button rotation, sorry, not target. It's pretty simple. I know 3 buttons so big. Yeah, but it's pretty simple. 3 button rotation, don't overcomplicate it. Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, filler. Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, filler. Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, filler. I can't stress how important it is to cast Void Bolt on cooldown. Don't be one of those people who are trying to refresh their dots in Void Form. Refresh your dots outside of Void Form. If you really have to, because you weren't paying attention, then you can refresh it in Void Form doing the filler part of the rotation. But it's imperative that you cast Void Bolt on cooldown. If you leave it off cooldown for even 1 second, you're going to lose at least 5 stacks of Void Form that you could have had. The Void Forms are going to be shorter, you're going to be dealing less damage, you're going to fall out of Void Form faster, and it's just going to fuck you up for the whole entire freaking fight. If you mess up with this, then you're fucked. Just keep that in mind. So, why is Void Bolt so important to cast on cooldown? Not only is it one of your main sources of single target damage, it generates the highest insanity in Void Form. It generates 20 insanity, while your Shadow Word Void generates 15. Of course, your Critical Strike generates 35, but that's a different thing. So, you want to make sure you're spamming that Void Bolt on cooldown. Not 0.5 seconds after it's off cooldown. Not 0.2 seconds after it's on cooldown. You want to cast as soon as it is on cooldown. Meaning, you should be spamming the Void Bolt ability before it even comes off cooldown. Now, the reason we have 2 abilities after Void Bolt, why do I keep calling it Void Form? After Void Bolt, then it's specifically because of you can only fill 2 globals within each Void Bolt usage. So if I cast Void Bolt, I can now cast 2 globals before Void Bolt's off cooldown again. So that's the generic idea. Void Bolt, 2 globals, Void Bolt, 2 globals, Void Bolt, 2 globals. Now the reason you're casting Shadow Word Void It's because Shadow Word Void is your second highest insanity generating ability, and your highest, depending on traits, or if not your second highest, single target damage dealing ability after Void Bolt. So it's pretty much up there, right? So you're going to be casting that immediately after Void Bolt. And the filler part of the rotation, it could be many things, to be honest. Like, it could be refreshing your dots if you need to refresh them. It could be casting Mind Flay. It could be casting Mind Sear, depending on the situation. Let me give you an example. Generically, let's say I'm just doing single target. Let me quickly enter. There we go. Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, filler. Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, filler. That's what it's going to be. You're going to do Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, filler, Void Bolt, filler, filler, Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, filler. Now notice that it said Void Bolt, filler, filler there. That's because there's going to be situations where you cast Void Bolt and your Shadow Word Void is on cooldown. If this is the case, you're not going to sit down and wait for Shadow Word Void to come off cooldown. You're going to instantly cast a Mind Flay. Or let's say you're going to refresh your dots, right? You're going to cast a Mind Flay. You're just going to almost fully channel Mind Flay till it comes off cooldown. If you need to refresh your dots, you're going to do, let's say I need to refresh 2 dots on target, and I'm in Void form. I'm going to do Void Bolt, refresh a dot, Void Bolt, refresh a dot, refresh a dot. But that's just a generic rotation. So let me give you a quick example of it. I'm in Void form now. Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, filler, Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, filler, Void Bolt, Mind Flay channel, Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, filler, Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, filler, Void Bolt, Mind Flay channel, Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, fill out of Void form. Now notice that I kind of skipped over casting Shadow Word Void a few times when it had like 0.5 seconds left in its cooldown. Why didn't I just wait for it? There's a general rule when you're playing Warcraft, always be casting. If you're not casting something, you're not dealing in damage. If you're not dealing in damage, your logs are going to be shit. If your logs are shit, then you're pretty much useless at the class, so you should be playing something else. But that's not motivation. So I'll give you a better explanation. The reason I am I'm ignoring to cast Shadow Word Void is because it has a 0.5 second cooldown. So I'm not going to sit and wait for it. If I sit and wait for it, that means by the time Void Ball comes off cooldown, I won't be able to press it instantly because I'm going to have to wait 0.5 seconds before I can press it because I'm still going to be on the GCD. So even if your Shadow Word Void has 0.5 seconds left on it before it comes up, don't wait for it. Just cast Mind Flay. If there's any point in your rotation where you're standing doing nothing, you're playing your spec wrong. This isn't Beastmaster Hunter, where you can stand and do nothing and do DPS. No shade to the Beastmaster Hunters out there, but still, if you stand and do nothing, you're fucking up your rotation. So even if it has like 0.5 seconds left on it, you might think, let's just wait for it. No, don't wait for it, because the next Void Bolt that you're going to try to press it, you're not going to be able to press it because you're still going to be on GCD for 0.5 seconds. So make sure if it has 0.5 seconds left on it, you're just going to instantly channel Mind Flay. So let's give the whole rotation a go. Start with the build phase. First priority, get my dots up on my target that's marked nipple. I get into Void form, big crit there. Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, filler, Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, filler, Void Bolt, Mind Flay channel. Void Bolt, Mind Flay channel again, because it's still on cooldown. Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, filler, Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, filler. Now I fell out of Void form right there. I'm going to take this opportunity to refresh my dots quick. Then enter Void form again. Start my rotation all over again. Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, filler. Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, filler. Void Bolt, Mind Flay channel. Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, filler. Now let's say I need to refresh my dots, right? I'm not going to do Void Bolt, refresh dots, and then fuck it up. I'm just going to do Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, refresh dots. There. I'll show you guys again for Vampiric Touch this time. So I'm just going to do Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, and then refresh my dots. Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, Vampiric Touch, Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, Mind Flay, Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, Shadow Word Pain, Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, Mind Flay, Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, Vampiric Touch. That's how you're going to be refreshing your dots if for some reason you have to refresh your dots in Void form. But keep in mind, guys, it's never really a good idea to ever refresh your dots in Void form. Generically, make sure you're refreshing your dots as soon as you fall out of Void form. That's the ideal part of that's the ideal time to refresh your dots. Don't try and refresh it inside of Void form. It wastes damage. But of course, if you're DPSing like on Grong and then an ad spawns, you're gonna have to dot it. You're just gonna have to do that, or you're gonna miss out on so much damage. So that's when you're going to use that Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, Shadow Word Pain, or Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, Vampiric Touch part of the rotation. Generically, the filler part of the rotation is just that. It's a filler. You cast a filler when you have nothing else to cast. When your two main abilities can't be casted. What are your two main abilities? Shadow, not Vampiric Touch, Void Bolt, and Shadow Word Void. Those are your two main abilities. Keep in mind, you're never going to do Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, Shadow Word Void. Don't cast two Shadow Word Void charges right after each other. It's a mistake. If you do that, all of a sudden your next Void Bolt is going to have a Mind Flay channel, a full Mind Flay channel afterwards. And it's just going to fuck up your rotation. Just don't do it. Just don't. You'll always cast one Shadow Word Void. Always have one Shadow Word Void ticking. Never have two charges. Never spend two charges all at once. That's just your generic rotation for it. Now, let's get a bit into the CD usage. Our only cooldown is Shadow Fiend. I know it's not. I know we don't have cooldowns like Destruction Warlocks and Affliction Warlocks, where we get a Johnny Sin stick as soon as we use it. But hey, it's a cooldown regardless. So let's talk about it. What it does is that it summons a Shadow Fiend to attack the target for 15 seconds, and each melee hit that the Shadow Fiend does generates 3 insanity. And this is affected by haste, meaning if you use it during Bloodlust, all of a sudden you're going to get a major... It's going to deal a lot more damage because it's going to get more melee hits in, because it's affected by Lust. If you use it late in Void form, it's going to have more haste added to it as well. Keep in mind... Now, for Shadow Fiend usage, their generic rules, never use it outside of Void form. Never use it to get yourself into Void form. Just never do that. Because when you enter Void form, you do 5% more damage from Legacy of the Void, and 20% more spell damage. So using it outside of Void form is pretty much pointless. But also if you use it in Void form, it gives you insanity as well. So that means it makes your rotation that much easier when you're inside Void form after you've used it. Meaning you can push longer stacks of Void form, etc. So never use it outside of Void form, and never sit on it for too long. Extremely important. Now, the way to min-max it is to basically use it depending on the situation, right? If you have like a 2-minute fight, use it at around 14 seconds of Void form. Let's say you guys lusted the pool, you can use it around 14 seconds of Void form there, so you can have that extra haste plus the Bloodlust added to it as well. Then you're going to be able to push. That means you're still going to be attacking the boss by the time you reach 25 stacks of Void form, because that's 15 seconds later, right? You're still going to be attacking the boss. Until you reach 30 stacks of Void form, is going to be attacking the boss still, meaning you're still going to be getting that 3 insanity with it. And it's going to help you stay in Void form for a lot longer if you have Lust and all that stuff. Generically, use it at 7 seconds is fine. But, like I said, don't sit on it for too long. The difference between min-maxing your Shadow Fiend usage, like using it at XXX stacks, and using it instantly on pull as soon as you enter Void form, it's so small that it's not even really much worth the effort. Like it's still at like maybe a 1k DPS difference, or let's say a 400 DPS difference. It's not that important. It's a DPS if you use it. How should I put it? Like if you use your Shadow Fiend as soon as you enter Void form, yes, it's a DPS loss. But you know what's a bigger DPS loss? If you waited till you reach 30 stacks of Void form before using it, and you're on a 3-minute fight. That means your Shadow Word Fiend is not your Shadow Word Fiend. Why am I saying Shadow Word Fiend? Your Shadow Fiend is not gonna be off cooldown before the fight's over. It's gonna come off cooldown after the fight's over, which means you've all of a sudden missed an extra usage. Missing an extra usage of Shadow Fiend is an extreme DPS loss than just using it at as soon as you enter Void form. But generically, use it at 7 stacks of Void form, it's fine. Don't use it outside of Void form, don't sit on it for too long. Know the fight that you're going to, know how long it's going to last, and time your Shadow Fiend usage accordingly. If it's going to last 9 minutes, you only have 4 Shadow Fiend usage. 1 in pull, and then 3 during the fight. If it's a 3-minute fight, you have 2 Shadow Fiend usage. You have 1 in pull, and then 3 minutes later after it comes off cooldown. If it's a 3-minute fight, then it's imperative that you get your Shadow Word Fiend off pretty fast. Of course, it changes depending on your group, your guild, etc. Depending on how fast you guys can kill it. But generically, if you know the time, make sure you get off as soon as possible so you can have an extra usage. So that's the Shadow Fiend. Now let's talk about Mindseer. Mindseer is initially just an AoE Mind Flay, like I said, 5 damage per target hits, which brings us to the AoE rotation part of the guide. We're going to deal with these 4 targets right here, and we're going to assume we're using Twist of Fate, not Misery or Dark Void. So the goal in the build phase is still the same. Build. You're going to get your dots up first, on all the targets, obviously, and then you're going to cast Shadow Word Void, and then you're gonna Mind Sear. The reason we're Mind Searing instead of Mind Flaying is because Mind Sear replaces Mind Flay at 3 targets. It will generate more insanity than Mind Flay at 3 targets. A full channel of Mind Flay generates 12 insanity, but casting Mind Sear on 4 targets generates 5 insanity per target's hit. 5 times 4, that's 20 insanity. Pretty simple math. Mind Sear replaces Mind Flay at 3 targets or more. Mind Sear replaces Shadow Word Void at 6 targets. Mind Flay replaces Void Bolt in the rotation at, I believe, 10 targets. So if you have 10 targets, you're going to ignore casting Void Bolt, because Mind Sear would just generate so much insanity. Now, we're in the build phase, so we're going to quickly get our dots up on all the targets quick. We're going to use Shadow Word Void to enter Void form. If I get a lucky crit from Whispers of the Damned, I'm going to enter Void form without casting Mind Sear. If I don't, I'm just going to channel Mind Sear. And then our sustain phase will come around. Now, for stacked targets, the sustain phase is pretty much the same. It's pretty much the same, since you basically just do the single target rotation, except that Mind Flay is now going to be Mind Sear. The reason you do that is because of the fact that when you cast Void Bolt, like I said, it refreshes the duration of, it adds 3 seconds to all your dots in the area of the target that it hit. So if I cast it on the nipple right here, all these other targets will get 3 seconds added to their dots. So maintaining dots on stacked targets becomes a hell of a lot easier. But let's say I have to refresh dots, then you'll see me refresh dots inside the filler part of the rotation. So let's start quick. I'm just going to get my Break Touch on these guys quick. Get a Mind Blast off. Keep in mind, guys, it's imperative to make sure you have both of your dots on the target, especially if you're using the Spiteful Aberration Straight, because the Spiteful Aberration Straight will only deal increased damage to a target that has Vampiric Touch on it. So if the target does not have Vampiric Touch on it, then it's as if you don't even have the trait equipped. So right now I'm just doing my normal rotation. I see that I'm going to have to refresh dots on Void form. I don't want to, but I'm going to have to regardless. Wait, am I? No, not really. I can refresh it as soon as I fall out. So as soon as I fell out of Void form, I'm refreshing my dots quick. Then I'm going to enter Void form again. I noticed I didn't refresh those 2 dots there. So I'm going to refresh the dots during the filler part of the rotation. Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, Vampiric Touch, Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, Shadow Word Pain. So this is just the basic generic stacked target rotation. It's imperative to make sure you get your dots on the target before you enter Void form. Or if you're doing the burst strat, then you're gonna use it when you enter Void form. But I'll talk about that later. We're gonna cast our Shadow Word Fiend. We're gonna cast our Shadow Word Fiend in the next Void form. I should have cast it on the first, but I just want to demonstrate the rotation. We're entering Void form now. Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, Mind Sear. Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, Shadow Word Fiend. Void Bolt, Mind Sear channel. Refresh the dot. Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, Mind Sear. Notice that I'm still casting Void Bolt on cooldown, even though my Void Bolt cooldown is a bit fucked up, so I'm fixing it now. There we go. So notice that I'm still casting it on cooldown. And I'm just DPSing 4 targets, and I haven't even procced Twist of Fate yet. We'll look at the damage breakdown when we get out. It's imperative to make sure as soon as you fall out of void form, take this opportunity to refresh the dot R2. Dot R2 or 3. If the dot needs to be refreshed, take this opportunity to refresh it. Don't wait till you enter void form and then realize, oh my god, my void form is my dots need to be refreshed. The key to playing Shadow Priest is just having good awareness in general. The rotation right here, like I said, is pretty much a single target rotation. And it's pretty simple. The rotation gets harder when you have spread out AoE targets and you're using Twist of Fate. Spread out AoE targets in general. That's when the rotation gets a lot harder. When you have spread out AoE targets. But generically, know your dots basically. You'll get experience with this when you play the spec in general. So you know how many can you get away with not refreshing your dots to the void form without it falling off. You'll get to know that when you play your spec, but generically, play it safe at start. Don't overthink it. Don't think that I can push this when I actually can't, because I don't have to haste for it. So make sure you pay attention to your dot timers and when they're going to time out. Now, the dots are extremely crucial to your DPS rotation. Extremely crucial, even though they hardly deal any damage. Because your Shadow Word Pain procs your if it crits, it procs your Spiteful Aberrations in the first place, which as you see is the main source of our damage. This procs your Shadowy Aberrations. That's what Shadow Word Pain does. Once your critical strikes, a shadowy version of your soul will fly towards your target and deal damage to it. Now, the Vampiric Touch procs the Spiteful Aberrations trait. The Spiteful Aberrations trait deals XX damage per item of the Azurite piece of gear, only to targets that have Vampiric Touch on them. So obviously having both of the dots on the targets are crucial. There's a general rule when it comes to applying your dots to targets. The rule is pretty simple. If the target's going to live for 3 seconds or more, apply Shadow Word Pain. If the target's going to live for 10 seconds or more, apply Vampiric Touch. So bosses, as you know, are obviously going to live for more than 10 seconds. So both of the dots need to be applied. Now let's talk about the burst rotation, which you're going to be using for every sort of fight. It doesn't matter which fight it is. For a single target, for AoE, for dungeons, for dungeon bosses, same thing applies. It's imperative to make sure you start a fight in void form. You must start a fight in void form. You'll lose a lot of damage if you don't start a fight in void form. That's true. So make sure that you start your fight in void form. But how do you do this? You might think that you can just build up insanity by casting Shadow Word Powered Shield on allies and stuff, and then waiting till the boss is pulled, then trying to enter void form then. It won't work. If you're dealing with a dungeon boss, it will work perfectly fine. But for raid bosses, as soon as you engage a raid boss, your insanity drops to 25. So if you had 100 insanity when you start, as soon as someone pulls the boss, that guy, we all know that annoying guy on your raid team, that ninja pulls the boss all the time. If he ninja pulls the boss, all of a sudden your insanity is just gone. And you're left trying to spam F2, which is my F1, which is my void form ability. I'm left spamming it like, wait, why am I not in void form? Oh, he ninja pulled the boss. That's why. So the way you're going to do it is you're going to cast Powered Shield on everyone to get your insanity up to, let's say, 60, 65. 60, 65 area, around that area. 60 with Legacy of the Void, obviously. So you're getting your insanity up to that point. And now, this is when pre-casting void forms becomes a thing. What do I mean by pre-casting void form? I mean I'm casting void form. I'm casting Void Eruption when... Let me get rid of Void Origins quick. I'm casting Void Eruption at 3 seconds or 3 to 4 seconds before on the timer, right? So we do a pull 10. And all of a sudden the timer starts ticking down. Once it reaches that 3 to 4 second mark, then I begin casting it. What this will do is that as soon as you cast Void Eruption, it actually puts you in void form instantly. It's not a delay. Projectiles don't have to hit the target first. You cast void form and you're instantly in void. You cast Void Eruption and you're instantly in void form. Then the projectiles hit the boss, putting you in combat. Then your insanity will instantly drop to 25, but you're still in void form now. So this is the build that this is the way you're gonna play for the burst rotation. I'm gonna build my insanity up by applying Powered Shield to everyone. these random guys here who don't even know they're being videoed. And I'm going to do a pull timer. I'm going to wait till that 3. You can do it at 2 seconds if no one ninja pulls. But someone's going to ninja pull. So I'm casting right here, enter void form, get my dots up quick, and then I start casting. Doing my normal rotation. The reason I have to get my dots up quick first, because they're still the highest priority. If you don't have your dots up on a target, getting your dots up on the target becomes the highest priority. Overcasting Void Bolt, overcasting this, overcasting that. Keep in mind, this is for a boss, a single target boss that you're engaging. So if you're already DPSing a boss like Grong, and all of a sudden, you have an ad that spawns, you're not gonna fuck Void Bolt and dot the ad. So we're starting a fight. I pre-void formed. I quickly got my dots up with the target, and now I'm just DPSing the target with my normal rotation that I have, my 3-step rotation, if you want to call it that. I cast my Shadow Fiend as well. Keep in mind, guys, you're going to drop to 25 Insanity. 25 Insanity is pretty low. If you fuck around during this phase, you'll fall out of void form, and you actually lost an insane amount of damage. Pre-void forming is important, but if you fuck up your pre-void form and you enter void form, then you fall out like 2 seconds later, then you've lost so much damage, is unreal. You've lost all that time where you could actually just been building a normal void form. So make sure the first thing you're going to do is you're going to get your dots up, both of them, which is going to start by casting. As soon as you cast a Void Eruption, you're going to be spamming Vampiric Touch. And then as soon as Vampiric Touch is on the target, you're going to hit Shadow Word Pain, then Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, Mind Flay, Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, Shadow Fiend. Shadow Fiend becomes pretty neat in this sort of situation, because if you're not using Lust, it could be your Insanity will start dropping pretty quick, especially if you have bad Critical Strike. So casting that extra 3 Insanity per melee hit that the Shadow Word Fiend offers will really help stable you out. So using your Shadow Word Fiend at this point of rotation is pretty useful, and is actually recommended because you want to use it as early in the fight as possible. But I use it around. I usually use it around 7 seconds. So I'd enter Void Form, right? Pre-Void Form, get my dots up quick, Vampiric Touch, Shadow Word Pain, then Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, Mind Flay, then I do a Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, Shadow Fiend. But by the time I reach that Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, Shadow Fiend, I'd be at 6 to 7 seconds in my Void Form already. So you can keep that in mind. You can get your dots up first, do your normal rotation once, then Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, Shadow Fiend. And then you have perfect timing. Let's say if you lusted, and let's say you're running with the haste that I have, high haste, right? High haste, high crit builds. Then you've lusted the boss on pull. That means doesn't really matter about the haste as well, but it really helps as well. But you lusted the boss on pull. That's what I'm trying to say. Then you can actually delay using your Shadow Word Fiend to reach like 14 seconds of your void form, because the extra haste that you have from lust will easily help stable you out. So let me just void from here. Let me just wait. Let me get there. Yeah. Get my dots up quick. Let's wait till I drop to 25 Insanity. Now get my dots up quick. Okay, let's go. Then a Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, Shadow Fiend, because I'm falling really dangerously low. Ooh, I got a crit there. You see, crits extremely help a lot because of the fact that during this crucial moment of your rotation, they give you that insane boost of insanity that you actually need to keep you afloat. It's like drowning the burst rotation. You're trying your best to keep your head above water, and to eventually get that huge crit. Eventually, that huge kick in the water, your head goes all the way up, and you're no longer swallowing salt water. A bad analogy, but you get the point. I think that about covers everything you need to know for the AoE rotation that's stacked. There's one thing I want to talk about for the spread AoE rotation, which becomes a bit more difficult. The more targets you have, the more targets you have to dot. The more targets you have to dot, the more aberrations you spawn. The more aberrations you spawn to hit targets with Vampiric Touch, the more damage you deal. Which is why Shadow Priest and like Restless Cabal fight and the new raid, they're extremely OP because of the fact that we have so many ads. And all our aberrations are hitting all those ads as well. Let me just quickly break combat and I'll give you an example with Misery. Now the way Misery works is that, like, let's say you have like 5 to 6 targets with their spread. Shadow Word Void actually loses priority, which meaning you'll only start casting Shadow Word Void when, let's say, you only start casting Shadow Word Void when it's about to cap, meaning you just cast Shadow Word Void to avoid it capping. The more targets you get, the more value Shadow Word Void loses. If Shadow Word Void loses value, then what are we doing instead? We're spending our 2 globals refreshing our dots. That's what we're doing, because of the fact that our dots are going to fall off all the targets. You see all these targets here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus 4 plus 5. We have 9 targets right here. We're going to do a 9 target rotation on all of these targets, maintaining our dots on every single one of them. So one thing I'd advise for multi-dotting is to get a macro, create a macro, target mouse over. As you see, I can easily mouse over this target and apply a dot to it without even having to click it. I'm still clicking the nipple right here. I can easily apply dots to these targets because of the fact that I have a mouse over macro. So get a mouse over macro, create one yourself. It's pretty simple, and it should be pretty much used for every dot classer rather than having to manually swap to another dot target and then dot it. Your dots can be applied regardless of if they're in your line of, if you're facing them or not. So if your back is towards the target, you can still apply your dots to the target that's behind you without even having to turn to look at it. You can't do the same for Mind Blast and Void Ball, keep that in mind. So without further ado, let's quickly jump into it. We're going to dot all these targets on our build phase, and then we're going to maintain our dots via Void Ball, refresh dot, Void Ball, refresh dot. Our 2 globals between each Void Ball, we're going to spend refreshing the dots on all these targets, because as you're going to see, it gets a bit hectic when you have like 9 targets that you have to dot, or a lot of targets that are spread out in general. I won't have to do it that much for the 4 targets that are here, because I'm going to be focusing the nipple down, and I'm going to be void bolting the nipple, and they're just going to be adding 3 seconds to the timer. But these targets that are all spread out here, it's going to be a bit more difficult because I'm not going to be able to void bolt them. Never turn around to void bolt a target unless that target becomes your focus target. You've only void bolt and Shadow Word Void targets that are your focus target. You're not going to turn around and void bolt to increase the time. That's just going to fuck you up even more. Just pay attention to the timers. It's crucial to have awareness when you're playing dot class builds. You're playing dot casters. So I'm going to quickly get my dots up on these guys. I'm going to enter void form. Then I'm going to void bolt, Shadow Word Void, add a dot. Cast my Shadow Fiend now because I want extra insanity. Get that here. Let's refresh that. Now I'm gonna ignore casting Shadow Word Void, Shadow Word Void, and just focus on getting dots up and maintaining them. See, I'm spending both of my globals casting, pushing my dots. When I fall out of void form, I get a bit of a breather, because I can just sit down spamming dots until I enter void form again. Voila, I'm in void form. I see that my Shadow Word Void is capped, so I'm going to quickly get rid of it. I messed up my Void Bolt usage right there. See that stuff's falling off. I'll quickly refresh this. I'm just going to spend my build phase since I have so much haste now and so much crit. And I'm generating so much insanity via all these aberrations. They generate so much insanity when you have multiple targets. This is running with the Misery build. You'd be doing something similar to this on Conclave of the Winds, where there are a lot of raptors spawn. You just jump in the middle and you just pad those raptors, because that's where all your damage comes from. Dealing that insane damage to the raptors. But as you see, guys, it's just really all about focus. You need to be focused on exactly what you're doing, and focused on the dots that you have. Shadow Priest, yes, it does get extremely difficult when you reach AoE situations like this, where you have so many targets that you have to dot, so little time to dot them. Keep in mind, you're not going to be dotting a target with, if you're running Misery, with Vampiric Touch, if they're not going to live for 10 seconds plus. If they're going to live for 10 seconds plus, then you're going to dot the target. That is going to be the generic rotation. As you see, all of your damage comes from, at least 43% of it, comes from the aberrations when you have the talent combined with the trait itself. Which is why in AoE situations, particularly, that having the trait is extremely beneficial. We excel at spread out damage. We really excel in it. If the target's going to live for at least 10 seconds, we're gods. When 2 targets spawn, Shadow Priest can deal an insane amount of damage. If you do 26 damage normally, as soon as 26k damage normally on single target, if 2 targets spawn, you can instantly jump up to 30k damage. It's insane the amount of damage Shadow Priest can deal in AoE situations. Now let's give a Dark Void situation where, let's say we're in Opulence. And let's say for single target, keep in mind Dark Void has a 1.6 second cast time with my haste, and I have a decent haste amount, 1.6k haste. It has a 1.6 second cast time, and that's long. So that takes up 2 globals, roughly 2 globals, meaning that you're going to cast Void Bolt, Dark Void, then cast the other Void Bolt afterwards. If you cast Void Bolt, Dark Void, and let's say another global, then your Void Bolt's going to have been off cooldown for, let's say, 2 seconds. Oh, not 2 seconds, it's extreme, but at least a second. So make sure you cast Void Bolt, Dark Void, and then obviously just Void Bolt again. Since I have 4 targets in front of me, I'm just going to get my Vampiric Touch of them, enter Void form, Void Bolt, Shadow Word Void, Shadow Word Pain, Void Bolt, Dark Void. I could actually skip that Shadow Word Pain, to be honest. And you're going to use the next usage of your Dark Void not just to refresh your dots. You're going to use it particularly to extend your Void form, because it generates 30 insanity, and 30 insanity is a massive insanity boost. It generates more insanity than Void Bolt itself. So we're going to be using it at, like, let's say 20 stacks of Void form, because we want to all of a sudden get that insane insanity boost. Or let's say, it depends, to be honest. It depends on the situation you're in. If you need insanity ASAP, or need to refresh your dots ASAP, then you're going to be using it. But I don't need insanity ASAP, so I'm just going to use it right now. And it can act as an insane insanity generator, and it can help you stay in Void for longer. So the only dots you really have to worry about now is just refreshing your Vampiric Touches. I should have probably refreshed my Vampiric Touches when I was in my build phase, but it actually slipped my mind. You can be following this AoE rotation when you're encountering bosses like Opulence. Only Opulence. In fact, this is the only place where you're actually going to use this talent in a raid, and that's Opulence. You're not going to use it in the new raid. You're not going to use it in on any other bosses in the raid. You're not going to use it for champions. It's just useless. You're going to be using it in Opulence because of the fact you have the whole fucking China just spawns all of a sudden on the boss, and you need to hit all those targets at once for your Opal, Stone to proc, and for to apply dots to them. And then all you have to do is worry about applying Vampiric Touches to those targets and mines here. Roughly around the same damage as I do with it just did roughly around 43k damage from 4 targets. It's pretty decent amount. You could use Dark Void as well if you're new to the spec. Like I'd advise, because Shadow Priest can be extremely frustrating to play in AoE situations when you're new to the spec. Playing with Twist of Fate can be extremely heartbreaking if you don't know how to play with it correctly. But I'd advise you to, my advice for you is to just learn Twist of Fate. Learn to play Twist of Fate in AoE situations. Obviously not on Opulence because 6 billion mobs spawn all at once. So you're never going to play Twist of Fate there. But learn to play Twist of Fate. Learn to play it. If you don't know how to play Twist of Fate, learn to play. If you don't want to learn it, you better learn to play it because it's the main single target talent that you're going to use, and main talent you can use in every situation. Even stacked 4 targets like this, you're not going to be using Dark Void. As you saw, I could easily do the same amount of damage without using Dark Void and using Twist of Fate, and these mobs are all above 35%, so that means I can even proc Twist of Fate now. Now if all of a sudden all these mobs drop to 35% HP, I have a 10% damage increase, which is going to be huge. 10% plus 25%, 35%. The 25% is coming from Void Form. So all of a sudden you deal with 35% more damage than you would outside of Void Form. It's a huge insanity boost. So let's talk about playing with Twist of Fate. Playing with Twist of Fate in AoE situations, even spread out AoE, which you can, because if you're playing on champions, the targets are spread out. So playing with it's a bit difficult, right? Because it requires a lot of focus. Because of the fact that when you saw I was just playing with Misery, I could easily just cheese everything and just use one global for 2 dots. When you're playing Twist of Fate, you can't. You don't have that luxury. So we're just going to DPS these 3 targets here while attacking the nipple, because we're playing champions right now. So we're going to quickly get shield on all these guys here. Right, I'm going to enter Void Form. Void Ball, then I'm getting my dots on this target. And all of a sudden I'm spending my globals, getting my dots up on another target. I'm not really caring about my Shadow Word Void, because of the fact that getting dots up on this target is a big priority, it's a high priority, because of the fact that I need to get the dots up on this target before a Resident Demon Hunter kills it for you. So I fell out of Void Form now. I'm just refreshing my dots on this target, on these targets, doing my normal rotation, entering Void Form again. Still need to refresh dot on this one, so you have to pay close attention to all of your dots, guys. And as you'll see, the longer the fight progresses, as the fight starts progressing, your damage is just going to fly above everyone else's, because of the fact that, especially if you're doing the Zerg strat, if you want to get logs on champions, it's just simple. Do the Zerg strat. Have everyone attack the boss, and you're the only one soloing the ads. You'll get the ads at 10 to 35% health by yourself. And you'll have a 10% damage boost for the whole entire fight, for the whole duration of the fight. You'll just be playing with a 10% damage boost from start to finish. Especially if you have like a Warlock as well that's using Havoc and gets an ad low for you. So just make sure you're using your filler part of your rotation. You see, I haven't even really casted Mind Flay. I only cast Mind Flay if all my dots don't need to be refreshed, which is pretty much rare. So you're just going to be spending all your filler parts of your rotation refreshing your dots generically. I think that about covers everything I want to talk about in this guide. I guess we can just quickly go over gear quick. I got this from a Toldazar. I actually got it from my weekly chest, but it's from a Toldazar. I got this crit haste offhand from Toldagor. It's imperative that you have rings to have crit haste, because rings give the bulk of all your stats. If your main stat's mastery, you want to make sure your ring always has mastery on it. So it's crit haste in our scenario. So your rings must have crit haste. Even if you have a 380 ring with crit haste on it, and you've got like a 410 crit verse mastery, you can sim both. But I guarantee you, the one that's going to make your rotation easier and your life easier, and it's going to sim the highest, is going to be the crit haste. So you see, I got the ring here from Freehold. It just took me 37 runs, no big deal. And gives you 300 haste. It's the bulk of haste. And I have the ring from Siege. It gives me 200 crit, 200 haste. I'd advise you getting, realistically, you're only going to be able to get a ring with crit haste. And then other ring is going to be have more crit than haste. But get that set up so you can have crit and haste can be balanced out. As you see, without the buff, I have 1.5k crit and I have 1.6k haste. So you can get this crit haste ring. You can create a crit haste ring with Jewel Crafting. You can get this one from Freehold as well. You can get this one from Siege of Morales, and you can get a crit haste ring by spending these 7th Legion medals and buying a crit haste ring from there as well. The trinkets, we all know the Opulence trinket from Opulence. The conch is from Shrine, so these are pretty much Bis trinkets. You can also run with the, I believe it's called Crest of Paku. Yeah, Crest of Paku is actually pretty good as well because of the fact it gives you a nice that haste boost as well. Crest of Paku. I sadly don't have it on Mythic yet. You can get the Light Feather foot pads from Conclave. You can actually get 3 pieces of useful loot from Conclave. The back is crit haste, you can get it from Conclave as well. You can get the feet from Conclave, and you can get the haste string from Conclave as well. Pants, you can create it yourself. If you're lucky, it just took me 70k to create these. Or you could get the pants from right here, Undra, crit haste as well. Belt crit haste, you can get that from Freehold, like I said. And the gloves, I'm not actually sure where you get the gloves from, but you can also, yeah, I'm not sure where you get the gloves from. I believe it's from Waycrest Matter, but I might be wrong. But that's pretty much where you can get all your gear. All my gear is crit haste. I'm still low item level as well, just 4-7 on this too. But just keep practicing the rotation. I'd advise practicing with Twisted Fate. If you're struggling to maintain, if you're struggling to do Twisted Fate AoE rotation, which is basically just refreshing your dots on the filler part of your rotation, for like champions and stuff, just run Misery. It still deals decent damage, but you are nerfing your boss damage by at least 10%, and nerfing your overall damage by 10%. So I'd advise practicing Twisted Fate as much as possible, and that's pretty much everything I want to talk about. So this is my first video. Sorry for it being too long, and you can chew me out, but don't anal rape me. But if you have any questions, just ask in the comments, and Driven out.